Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for joining today's webinar hosted by the Sikh Research Institute. My name is Gurdev Singh and I will be the host for today's session. Harpreet Singh Sangha will be the moderator for today's session. The presentation will begin shortly. Before we get started, I wanted to review a few housekeeping items and let you know how you can participate in today's web event. I will then provide some information about the Sikh Research Institute and today's presenters, a panel of alumni from Sidak, SikhRI's Leadership Development Retreat, before turning it over for the main presentation. Today we are joined by Harsharan Kaur, Bhavraj Singh and Shamsher Singh. Attendees, let me just mute somebody's mic is making a lot of noise here. Sorry for that, guys. Okay, you are now looking at an example of the GoToWebinar attendee interface. It is made up of two parts. The viewer window on the left, which allows you to see everything the presenters will share on their screen, and the control panel on your right here. Use the orange arrow to open and close the panel. Closing it and opening it again. And the audio pane provides audio information. By default, you have joined the webinar via mic and speakers. If you prefer, you can join the audio via telephone by selecting the Use Telephone button there, and the dial-in information will be displayed, including an audio pin. Questions during the webinar should be directed to the moderator. You can send your question either by typing it in your attendee panel, or you may ask it over the mic. Please keep the questions short and relevant to the topic being presented. In case you don't have a mic, please state your name, city, and question in the questions panel. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and everyone will receive an email within 7 days with a link to view a recording of today's event. If for any reason you experience any technical difficulties during the session and you can't see the main presentation, for example, then do not hesitate to contact me via the chat panel. If you lose your internet connection or have to restart your computer during the session, then you can rejoin the session by clicking on the URL that is included in your original registration confirmation email. Finally, at the end of this presentation, I will launch a testimonial and feedback window. We'd appreciate it if you could take a few moments to provide your feedback and comments on how this session went and how we can improve future sessions. I will now provide some background on the Institute and also our panelists. The mission of the Sikh Research Institute is to provide educational resources to Sikhs to lead a Guru-inspired life. SikhRI is an inclusive resource for you, your family, your community, and 25 million Sikhs worldwide for educational programming, strategic solutions, and Gurmukhi content. I'd like to also introduce our panel of presenters today. Harsharan Kaur is a student at the University of Manitoba in Canada. In June, she was selected as one of Amnesty International's top 20 Canadians 25 and under. She works for the RCMP as a 911 operator and is a long-time volunteer with SikhRI Canada. Bhavraj Singh is a graduate of Simon Fraser University and lives in Vancouver, British Columbia. Procurement and Marketing Professional. He works at a point-of-sale software company looking after their hardware line. Bhavraj loves to play competitive hockey. Shamsher Singh is the spokesperson for the National Sikh Youth Federation, a UK, United Kingdom-based think tank and educational charity. He has a master's degree in computer science from Kingston University, and his interests include reading, poetry, films, and architecture. And so without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to Shamsher Singh and our panelists to begin today's presentation. There you go. Shamsher ji.
Hello. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. On behalf of myself, Harsharan and Bhavraj, I'd like to welcome you all to this webinar today. Today's topic is Guru Nanak today. And we want to understand how can we connect with and understand who Guru Nanak was today. Can everyone hear me okay?
Shamsher, this is Harpreet. Can you please start your slideshow? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yes, it started right now. I'm sharing my screen.
Nope. Now we are able to see it. If any of the participants can't see the screen, it says who was Nanak. Can you please either do the raise your hand virtually or put any comments or questions in the chat? I'll be taking care of any technical issues. Again, this is Harpreet Sangha. I'm the moderator. And go ahead, Shamsher. I'm sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. So we're looking at Guru Nanak today. And for us to connect with and understand Guru Nanak and to really understand who he was today and how we would receive him and deal with him today, we thought we'd go through who was Nanak and try to connect with him in 1469, in that era, the issues he stood for, the things he spoke against and the things he spoke for, and how he tried to lead the community, the very young Sikh community, forward. So Puran Singh sums up incredibly accurately Guru Nanak's worldview and who he was. And when he says Guru Nanak condemns false creeds and crooked politics and unjust social order, he condemns the hollow scriptures and isms of the time, and condemns barren pieties, asceticisms, trances, and sound hearing yogas. And he goes on to talk about other various religious and political hypocrisies. And this is very important because these issues that Puran Singh's discussing and talking about here are things that we give a lot of weight to today. These are things that we have devoted a lot of energy towards today, so it's really important to understand this perspective that's being presented here. Bhavraj Singh?
Yeah, so just in a nutshell, we have a shabad from by Gurdwara here, which accurately and nicely sums up the life and teachings of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, especially when it comes to his journeys, his teachings, and the message that he tried to spread. One of the key lines that really struck a chord with me here was a Marya Sikha Jagat Vich Nanak Nirmal Panth Chalaya. So here we see that by Gurdwara Ji, he basically concluded that Guru Nanak Dev Ji had in fact organized a new Nirmal Panth, which was an entirely new sovereign train of thought, which was differing from all existing religions and sects at the time. And you could tell that he studied the important existing religions and their interactions with one another to understand the reasons which led Guru Nanak Dev Ji to embark upon the creation of a new panth or movement. So it's very nicely, accurately summed up here as to how and why this new train of thought began.
My name is Harsharan. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji was a social revolutionary. That is quite obvious, and I hope everyone kind of already understands that. So some of the things that Guru Nanak Dev Ji challenged was social boundaries, the caste system, the women's rights. He had this idea of a utopian society and harmony with the environment. So when it came to the equality of women, you know, the idea of sati, the idea that women had no rights or that they were, you know, less than men, he really tried to bring attention to that, and he really wanted to, you know, bring respect to women. You know, he even thought, you know, the idea of from women man is born, without woman man is conceived. To women he is engaged and married, so on. You know, at the end he goes, "Oh Nanak, only the true Lord is without a woman." And so doing so, he like promoted women's right and equality, which was a first for the 15th century. And then when it came to the caste system, you know, it was so ingrained in society that some people are above and some people are less, and that's the way you were going to be treated, and that's how your whole life was going to plan out. Guru Nanak Dev Ji truly tore it apart. You know, people do stuff and they just think it's the right thing to do. They follow rituals, they follow traditions, and we never stop and question why we're doing certain things. Guru Nanak Dev Ji truly did challenge and question that. When it came to the vision of a utopian society, you know, he really wanted a nirmal bant, as Bhavraj was talking about, where society there was no boundary or caste or gender discrimination. You know, it was a vision of Ekam God, where everyone truly was equal. And, you know, at that time, it was custom for religious leaders to address only their own congregation, and a segregation of different religions was being created. But Guru Nanak Dev Ji broke down those traditions and tried to, attempted to speak to all of humanity. Shamsher?
Samsher, make sure you're not on mute.
So as well as challenging social discrimination, Guru Nanak Dev Ji also challenged religious and political domination. Guru Nanak Dev Ji's revelation of Ik Oankar, that we are all one and there's a divine energy that's connecting all of creation, was incredibly revolutionary. It still is today. Many religions are still divided, whether or not you're part of their religion, then you're seen as, some religions would say that you're less than human, or you're impure, or you're a kafir. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji really confronted the religious and political authorities on these issues, and access and a right to worship was something that Guru Nanak Dev Ji was very passionate about. Even in India today, members of the lower castes have to worship the divine through a very segregated and stratified religious structure. And Guru Nanak Dev Ji challenged that and said that the connection of the individual with the divine should be direct. There's no need for a middleman. There is no need for a priestly class. It's a unique and spiritual connection that's innate in every individual human. And as well as challenging all of these issues, Guru Nanak questioned ritual worship and the inherent hypocrisy that Guru Nanak saw around him in that world. It was a very dark place that Guru Nanak was born into, where the priestly class controlled and dominated every aspect of your life, your birth, your marriage, your death. Everything was controlled by them, and without them, your birth, your marriage, your death, none of that was sanctified, and none of that was approved in a spiritual and divine perspective. And we know Guru Nanak rejected the Brahminical control of his wedding ceremony from when he was a child, his wedding ceremony, and even the last rites of members of his community. So Guru Nanak tried to create a distinct and accessible, that was the key of the distinctness. It wasn't just being different for the sake of being different. It was about accessibility. It was about Eko. It was about collective humanity and the spiritual progression without hindrance. And by doing this, Guru Nanak redefined religious ideals, and he took away control from the priestly class and the so-called higher castes. And this wasn't an intention that Guru Nanak didn't want to challenge their control for the sake of challenging their control. It was a byproduct of saying that if we are all one, then you can't have a stratified society. And another key thing that Guru Nanak challenged, and he made clear for not only for the community that grew around Guru Nanak, but also the wider world, is that humanity is not separate from religion or state. And everything that Guru Nanak did built towards this idea. The priestly class always want to separate religiosity from humanity and say that this is a sphere, a domain where they have exclusive control, where individuals cannot come into that sphere of control unless they are sanctified, unless they have the religious approval. And we see that today. The religion does not allow state to interfere with them. The Vatican City is a prime example of this, how it's a unique, it's a separate state within the wider government of Italy. And the same goes for government. Government separate themselves from humanity and say, unless you are part of government, unless you interact with government through the channels that they've specifically created, your interaction is not valid. And Guru Nanak really challenged this issue and tried to break down those barriers and say humanity and religion and state are all one, that as humans everybody's voice is equally as important. Over here we have a slok from Asa Kivar where Guru Nanak talks about the Brahmins and how that outwardly their appearance, by wearing marks on their foreheads and by wearing their religious garb, they appear to be the beacons of religiosity, yet in their own privacy and of their own, when they worship indoors in the privacy of their own homes, they eat halal meat, they read Islamic verses, and he's directly challenging them, and he's asking them to renounce their hypocrisy. And this is no minced words here. This is very direct. The message that Guru Nanak is trying to give. And also here we have an example from where Guru Nanak is talking about, from Baba Bani, when Guru Nanak is talking about the rulers and how the rulers are like dogs. The kings are tigers and the officials are dogs, and they harass people. Dogs lick their blood, and he's directly challenging political and state governance here and their role that they play in society. So it's very clear from Gurbani. You can see Guru Nanak's perspective on so-called religiosity on one hand and state and governance on the other. He really doesn't, there's no pretense here. There is no, with state we have layers of bureaucracy, and that bureaucracy, today religions adopted that same bureaucracy. Our Gurdwara, the management structures that we have in the UK especially, it emulates the model of government because it controls the way you can interact with the Gurdwara. I mean, technically, as an individual, I'm not a member of the Gurdwara. So I have no say in the decisions they make that affect the community, that affect the future generations. Unless you're a member of the Gurdwara, it's an exclusive members body, and they've taken this bureaucracy and they've made it their own. And Guru Nanak challenges this level of hypocrisy, and he challenges the pretense and the illusion of government and how it's designed to control individuals. Bhavraj Singh?
Yeah, so just in a nutshell, I want to go over how Guru Nanak Dev Ji was received at the time when he was in the middle of his journeys. You know, we could see that he was viewed as a rebel at the time, and he opposed the social norms, the political norms, and the religious norms at the time. So, you know, we had instances where he was imprisoned by Babur just for challenging the rulers. Again, like I said, he was seen as a rebel. He openly challenged political authority. Religious authorities challenged him. You had the priests and Brahmins and etc. and whatnot. The Sids challenged him, basically outright calling him a child. He was tested by the community at many points in his life to see whether his teachings or his message would hold true. The only person that actually recognized him was his sister. She recognized that, you know, this guy is indeed a revolutionary. He's going to bring change and whatnot. So that's how his reception is summed up in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, I totally. The way the states and the religious authorities received him, it shows, in a way, it shows how afraid they were of his message by imprisoning him and by challenging him and calling him a child, like the Sids did.
So now we're going to come to the point in our presentation where we talk about Guru Nanak Dev Ji today. Some of the main questions we have to try to understand how Guru Nanak Dev Ji would view today is, what issues would Guru Nanak challenge? How would the community receive Guru Nanak Dev Ji? Or how would the wider world receive Guru Nanak Dev Ji? And maybe we can understand, if Guru Nanak Dev Ji was here today, what kind of world, the Sikh world and the wider world, would we have? Through these three questions, we will try to understand. Guru Nanak Dev Ji didn't challenge Sikh issues. He challenged more society issues. You know, his message was different from, you know, his message is that although we're different from each other in various ways, we all kind of come from the same source, the same light. And so through that idea and through that potential, we can reach our potential, and then, you know, we can kind of, once we understand each other, we can enjoy each other more. So next slide. So some of the issues that he challenged was GMO seeds, so that's genetically modified food, stem cell research, privacy, especially, you know, recently in the media, Snowden and Manning have been in the media. Abortion, LGBT rights, you know, the political spectrum, where would Guru Nanak Dev Ji fall, and also the idea of drone warfare. So when it comes to GMO seeds, it's kind of up and coming in our society, in our world. You know, it's becoming a bigger issue as our populations increase. So Guru Nanak Dev Ji, how would he look at this? You know, we're not saying that there's a right or wrong way to look at all these issues, because we truly don't really know how Guru Nanak Dev Ji would exactly feel about these issues. But through Gurbani and through our history, we can kind of get a general idea of perhaps where he would kind of fall on the spectrum of things. You know, for example, GMO seeds. Guru Nanak Dev Ji essentially taught that the purpose of human life was to, you know, grow and achieve a state of union, you know, and harmony with God and his creation. So, you know, that should kind of, you know, make us question, well, are GMO seeds okay? Are they not? Does it depend on what they're being used for, or how far we're going with the genetically modified food? You know, just some certain questions that we could ask. Same thing goes with stem cell research. You know, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, how would he feel about, or what would he say about science and the use of using cells from, you know, an embryo to help an adult, or, you know, stem cell to help each other? Or where would he draw a line? Would he say absolutely not? Or would it depend on certain circumstances? You know, we should be able to look through Barney and kind of get a general idea. And then also privacy, Snowden and Manning, spying, would Guru Nanak Dev Ji be considered an enemy of his country if he was here today, and all that he shares and all that he talks about, the way he challenged politics, the rulers of his day, would he be labeled an enemy of his country? He truly, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, condemned the exploitation of the poor by the rich and powerful, and he spoke up for fairness and justice for all. So, if we looked at it from that way, well, are Snowden and Manning truly spying, or are they enemies of the country? Should they have been treated the way they were treated? What would Guru Nanak Dev Ji say? The idea of freedom, individual freedom, including freedom of religion, was so important for Guru Nanak Dev Ji and the gurus after him. They carried on a major struggle. So through, Guru Nanak Dev Ji's perspective and through Barney, these issues, how would we feel about them, and what would Guru Nanak Dev Ji say if he was here today? Bhavraj?
Just jumping to abortion, I guess, next. Today, if we look at this whole abortion debate, we have the pro-choice versus pro-life and whatnot. And, one has to examine the circumstances under which one would want or not want an abortion. So having said that, there's two circumstances. One just, simply goes out and conceives and decides not to have a child, or there's other circumstances where there's rape. So when you go back to Guru Nanak Dev Ji's underlying message of equality for all women, it becomes a bit of a touchy subject, because one would wonder what would be the message of Guru Nanak Dev Ji compared to what our leadership is disseminating to us today. So it's just one of those thought-provoking subjects. The other one is lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender rights. Again, this boils down to Guru Nanak Dev Ji's universal message of love and equality for all. And again, going back to what the current leadership is saying versus what you think Guru Nanak Dev Ji would say. To me personally, I have no idea what he would say, but again, it's one of those really thought-provoking debates that you constantly battle with in your head, and you question yourself. Do you go back to what Guru Nanak Dev Ji was preaching, and if he was preaching, how would you interpret it, versus again how our leadership today is giving us the message. So that's really, pretty much all I had to say about this. So, Shamshed?
Yeah, so if we try to understand Guru Nanak today in terms of politics, where would Guru Nanak fall on the political spectrum? Would he be a capitalist or a communist or a socialist? These are issues that we're faced with today that affect us, that affect our alliances and our communities that we live in, and the world that we're a part of. So it begs the question: is it important for us to understand the Guru's perspective on capitalism and communism and socialism, or would it be a combination of all of these? His worldview, in my perspective, Guru Nanak's worldview doesn't align very well with capitalism, or even perhaps with communism. So his political system, we're still trying to understand. And then you have issues like drone warfare, and there's so many other issues that on here, like, for example, immigration, gun rights, refugee status. There's so many issues that today, as Sikhs, we have a voice on, or we may have an opinion on. But if Guru Nanak was here today, what would his perspective be on this? And none of these issues we should be shying away from, because as Harsharan said, Guru Nanak didn't challenge Sikh issues when he was there. He challenged societal issues. I think sometimes that's lost because our world today is so inward-facing. As a Sikh community, we always look at what's affecting us rather than what's affecting the world. And Guru Nanak never shied away from any touchy subjects. Imagine the environment in which Guru Nanak challenged Sati, or he challenged Janelle. Imagine the environment where I mean, could we have a debate with the clergy of the church today? Could we have a debate with people in the Vatican over LGBT issues or abortion issues? These are issues that were incredibly important and ingrained in the fabric of the society that Guru Nanak was a part of, and today these issues are incredibly important to us. So we really got to try and build an understanding of how Guru Nanak would not only tackle these issues, but what issues would Guru Nanak tackle. And that leads us on to this next question is, have we progressed past the issues that Guru Nanak challenged? The issues that Guru Nanak challenged in 1469 and some of these issues that we highlighted today that maybe Guru Nanak would have a perspective on, I think Guru Nanak will probably definitely have a perspective on every single one of those issues. But have we progressed past any of that? The original issues that Guru Nanak challenged, such as the caste system, it's manifested totally in our society today. Today we have social discrimination. When you see somebody who's from a lower socio-economic background, you immediately make value judgments on these individuals. If you saw a prostitute on the street, you'd immediately make value judgments. If you saw somebody, for example, in the UK, we have people that live on state welfare, and there's a huge debate in the media right now about welfare cuts and issues that are affecting people on low incomes. And people are viewing them, even the state has taken a stance on this issue in their propaganda that these people are somehow lazy, that they could have jobs, but they don't have jobs because they're lazy and because they're uneducated because they're lazy and they don't care about their children and they don't care about their future. And that statement is blanket. And would Guru Nanak view people that are from backgrounds of poverty as being lazy? We have so much discrimination today in our society based on education and geography. I know in America especially as much as it is here in the UK, and this is why we have charities like Teach First coming forward. That geography shouldn't discriminate what postcode or zip code you live in or what area of town you live in shouldn't dictate your future. Everybody should have the same inherent rights. If we really believe in the philosophy of Ek Oankar, then all individuals should have equal rights. And this is just saying we should really question whether Guru Nanak of 1469 and today as Sikhs today have we moved past any of those issues. We have so many issues that we see that we think are so important, but have we even moved past the basic issues? This is a very interesting question. And the religious control that Guru Nanak talked about, how there shouldn't be a hierarchical system, that every individual is unique and beautiful and can experience divinity in their own life, in their own way. That's an idea that somehow seems to be lost now, and religious institutions have now inherent control structures. Guru Nanak's vision that people should be masters of their own spiritual progression, and we've handed that spiritual progression right back to the Granthi now, and to the Gurdwara. We somehow want them to lead us forward spiritually, where Guru Nanak handed us the control, where Guru Nanak said that you have the ability to connect with the divine. And all of nature around you, everything you see is manifestation of divinity. We go and search for that divinity in the Gurdwara, and we search for it with the new priestly class. So these are very, very interesting questions that we found incredibly thought-provoking. And Harsharan, do you want to talk about how Guru Nanak would communicate today?
Sure. So one of the biggest questions that we talked about was, would we even recognize Guru Nanak Dev Ji if he was around us, if he was amongst us? That's that's like one of the biggest ideas, is how would we even know if he was here? When we looked at him, would we think that, oh, he knows what he's talking about, or would we be like, oh, who is this person, and just kind of write him off? So the idea of, if he was around, and how would he communicate? Would he need a passport to travel? Would he have an authority where he would be applying and, going through the whole process, where he could be denied, being able to travel to other countries and stuff like that? It's a, it might be a silly question, but it is a question, and, it kind of comes to, the conclusion will possibly, yes, he would need a passport. And is that okay if he needed a passport, or if somebody was denying him or allowing him to travel? Is that important? Also, how would he communicate? Would he have a Twitter or an Instagram or a Tumblr or a Facebook? How would he share his message? Would he be on TV? Would he be having interviews with Anderson Cooper? Or would he be, talking with Oprah? Would he be like the Dalai Lama who, gets to chat with Obama and go for photo ops and do all that kind of stuff? How would Guru Nanak Dev Ji present himself in today's society? And is it okay if he had a Twitter, or if he had an Instagram? Or, if he was funny and you wanted to share, I don't know, a pic of his food, or, hanging with Bhai Mardana, or, anything like that, would that be acceptable? Would that maybe even would be a benefit for him to connect with different generations, different age groups, all these kind of things? And would there be a line that he would be like, okay, this is enough, Guru Nanak Dev Ji, that you could have interviews and stuff like that, but once you start getting published in magazines or something, then you're taking it too far. So just ideas like that, would it be okay? And also if he was here today, the idea of communication, how would that be taking place?
Yeah, I totally. I mean, this is such an interesting question. I particularly find this question so fascinating. I could do a whole webinar on how would Guru Nanak communicate today, because it just creates, it makes him real. I mean, imagine Guru Nanak sending tweets out. I mean, during the time, let's not create this picture of Guru Nanak as this mystical cloud of spirituality. Guru Nanak communicated in the most effective way possible, and even today, marketing professionals will tell you that the most successful way to spread a message is face-to-face communication. No matter how much marketing you have, you can't beat personal recommendations. You can't beat face-to-face communication. And this is what Guru Nanak did. He went from village to village, traveling around. We don't even know the extent of Guru Nanak Dev Ji's travels today. He travels for 24 years, over 17,000 miles. I don't know how many kilometers that is, but that's a heck of a lot of traveling, and to spread the message. So Guru Nanak realized that the most effective way I could communicate was literally to travel from place to place. And if Guru Nanak was here today, he would use, in my opinion, he would use the most effective ways of communicating today, and that's social media, that's internet media, because you can reach so many masses of people. And imagine seeing Guru Nanak on Oprah, or having a conversation with Obama or David Cameron. It's amazing. And how would that translate into education? Because we know Guru Nanak was definitely, as much as direct as he was, he enlightened through humor, he enlightened through nature. It provokes so many interesting topics, and like I said, it makes Guru Nanak real today. Yeah, Bhavraj Singh?
Yes. So just next question we thought was, how would the community receive Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji? Would he be seen as a reformer or a troublemaker? There's so many issues that we have in society today that that need to be looked at. I mean, not just within the Sikh diaspora, but in the broader community as a whole. Would Sikhs see him as a reformer or a troublemaker, or would the broader community at whole see him as a reformer or a troublemaker? That's one of the key questions that we had as well. I mean, again, I'm unsure. Next one was, would he be seen as someone who's progressive or disruptive? Would he disrupt the current balance? I mean, if you look at history in 1469, when the religion was founded, it was all, he basically created a disruption within the current social balance, and he challenged the norms. So, the question lies, if we have, not even the question, but you think to yourself, we have a lot of issues that are plaguing us today as well, and what would his opinion be? How would he address those issues? And I'm leaning more towards the disruptive side, but again, it's another one of those thought-provoking questions. Another one is, would Gurdwara committees exist? Now, this is a huge one for me because, living in Vancouver, having grown up here, I've seen a lot of Gurdwara committees transition in and out, and the fair share of arguments in politics and whatnot. If he was around and if he was widely accepted, would he run the Gurdwaras? I don't know. Where would this put all of our pracharaks? Would there be a need for pracharaks, or would he be the one sole pracharak that is the end-all, be-all when it comes to pracharak and preaching? Another big one is would the SGPC still exist? And this is a bit of a touchy one as well, because right now we rely on the SGPC to address all issues and that the Sikhs have, or the SGPC is generally amongst the majority of the people seen as a governing body of Sikhs. So is this something that we would need? Who would run this? Would the SGPC answer to Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, or would it even exist? Would there be a role for the Jathedar of the Akal Takht? That's another one. It's just, today the Jathedar is seen as having the final word, and he's basically the figurehead of the Sikh faith. And would that mean that there would be no seat for a Jathedar? How would all of that line up under the umbrella of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji if we were to accept him? Would these guys even accept him? That's another question. I'm not sure. So it's just one of those things that just makes your brain race 100 miles an hour thinking of all these things. Would we even recognize the importance of Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji today? That's another question. I mean, there's lots of people here that claim to be gurus, and we kind of dispel them because we know that the end all be all right now, the guruship lies with Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji. But where would that, again, now just another thing that comes to mind that's not on the slide is where would Guru Granth Sahib Ji fall into the whole mix of things as well? So there's a lot of thought-provoking questions that I have, and I don't know if you want to weigh in on this and add to what I've said.
Yeah, I mean, this is such again, this is such a thought-provoking question. One of my Christian friends was saying once that if Jesus was here today, the church wouldn't let him in. They wouldn't understand him. They would see him as a total troublemaker. And perhaps, I mean, imagine if all of a sudden Guru Nanak came back today and he walked into the Gurdwara, would they let him in? Or would they say, this guy's crazy, he's trying to take our control away from us? And it tries to help us understand and connect with who Guru Nanak really, really was. And generally, I think to the first two questions are something that we really need to look at. And I think it's a good barometer for our community, whether we would see him as a reformer or a troublemaker or progressive or disruptive. I think the community would be, I think a lot of people would be split on that. I mean, the politically correct answer is, of course, he'd be a reformer, and of course he'd be progressive, but the reality of that, the questions that Bhavraj is asking, it's very interesting to look at. And that brings us nicely onto the next area of focus is how would the wider world receive Guru Nanak? And this is perhaps one of the most interesting questions from a global perspective. Would Guru Nanak end up in Guantanamo if Bradley Manning and Edward Snowden and are in prison today and are in exile today for talking about issues that the world needs to know about and bringing attention to issues that the world needs to know about? And how would we look at Guru Nanak today from that perspective? If Babur imprisoned Guru Nanak, who was the authority at that time, how would today's leaders look at him? Well, how would they take his brand of religious politics, and how would they try to understand him? How would they categorize him? Because that's essentially what the modern world does today. Everybody has to fit into a box, into a category. How would he be understood by the state? And what kind of, would he be a political activist? Is that the label the wider world would give him, that this guy is a political activist? He's talking about the rights of humanity, and he's talking about the oneness of humanity, that he's solely a political activist, and his message is about politics. Because Ik Oankar is an incredibly political statement. We look at it as a religious term, but to advocate that we're all one across the world, it really challenges a lot of divisions that have been created around race and gender, and even state issues. We have international borders, we have passport controls, we have countries at war with each other. How would the wider world look at Guru Nanak? I mean, would the wider population in the UK, would they say he was just a rebel? Or in Canada, would they say he's just a rebel? Or would the media, would they make a mockery of Guru Nanak? How would they report him? I mean, we have tabloid media here, which is just as pervasive as the tabloid media perhaps anywhere in the world. And how would we handle that as a community? Because Guru Nanak would definitely, if he was as proliferate with his communication via social media, if he was media savvy, he would come under the scrutiny of social media. And this next point about whether he would be the Occupy movement's guru, perhaps people from the counterculture would perhaps connect more with Guru Nanak than people in mainstream culture. And by mainstream, the established Sikh community falls into mainstream culture as well. So how would these counterculture movements view Guru Nanak? Would they connect with them more? Would they become the potential molds for becoming the Sikhs? Would the Sikhs now be seen as the Brahminical classes? We're so established now, we're so wealthy, we have so many protocols. But these questions really are very important for us to understand Guru Nanak. And Harsharan, do you want to talk about the future? Harsharan?
Sorry, I was on mute. Okay, so the future. Are we not supposed to be the Nanaks of today? It was about the progression of the Guru, made the Jilla Guru. So I guess what we're kind of trying to question is how well are we following Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings today? Do we even know what his teachings were? When we go to a Gurdwara and we do Mathadik and we sit there and we eat our prashad, do we know why we're at the Gurdwara, or why we're doing Mathadik, or why we do things the way we do, or what our beliefs are? So all that's very important. We've kind of come to this stage in society where You know, we let the Granthi kind of sit there and talk, and we let, you know, the Gurdwara committees kind of, you know, tell us what we do, and this is the way it's going to be, and because we said so, and that is that. So it's like, do we even know what Guru Nanak Dev Ji's teachings were, and are we not supposed to be the Nanaks of today? Are we not supposed to be, you know, treating women equally, or, you know, getting rid of the caste system and not allowing that to play a role in our lives? You know, the idea of equality, the idea of seva, the idea of, you know, Vankeshikana, Girat Karo, and all that kind of stuff. Are we practicing that today? Or is it something that we only practice on Sundays when we go to the Gurdwara, and once we leave the Gurdwara, you know, we kind of stop and go on with our lives? Also, will we be having this conversation in another 500 years? Will we still be talking about women's rights, or will we still be talking about the caste system, or will in another 500 years another topic of issues will arise? You know, when will this? How are we progressing, I guess, is the question. And how do we take what Guru Nanak Dev Ji, you know, taught us so long ago, and kind of take it with us and use it in our daily lives in the society we live in today? And will that be important, what he said, in another 500 years? Shamsher?
Yeah, totally. I think that the idea of that we're meant to be the Nanaks of today is something that we really need to connect with. And somebody's commented here, Nawab here, that there's this percentage of Guru Nanak that's in all of us, and they may be suppressed to a degree, but it's still there. It's true, and we are meant to be the representatives of Nanak today. So some people may look at the questions that we raised and the conclusions that we've drawn as absurd, but these issues affect us. My opinion on abortion should be in line with Nanak's perspective on abortion. My opinion on refugees and drone warfare and privacy should be in line with Guru Nanak's perspective on those issues. Isn't that what being a Gurmukh is? Isn't that what Gurmat is about? That your philosophy is in line with the philosophy of the Guru, that you're living a Guru-orientated life. So this is so important for us to understand. To understand Guru Nanak today, or in 1469, and we just had another Gurpurab. Every year we celebrate Guru Nanak, the life of Guru Nanak, but how are we incorporating that into our lives? If we really want to see Guru Nanak today, the Guru's told us how that can happen. We have to become the Guru. That's the idea of Sikhi. If we're the Chela of the Guru today, it's our duty to progress to that point where we really do reflect what Nanak was and change the world around us. So thank you very much for taking part in this webinar. Thank you on behalf of all of us, and if you have any questions, you can. Sorry, somebody's commented and said Shabad Guru Surat Tun Chella. Yeah, that's a really important. That's from Guru Nanak. When Guru Nanak met the Siddhs, and they asked him who his Guru was, and Guru Nanak replied that the Shabad is my Guru and the Surat is my Chella. So he was connected with the divine frequency and the vibrations of the universe that flowed through him, and his consciousness was attuned to the higher self. So that's what he's talking about. But from a practical perspective, the Guru made the Chela the next Guru. The Guru didn't find somebody from outside, or the Guru didn't wait for a prophet to be born or somebody divine to be delivered. The Guru had the Chela, and the Chela was then made the next Guru. And if we're the Chela of the Gurus today, our goal is to live as Guru-orientated and as Guru-inspired lives as we can possibly live. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, may I just intervene? Can everybody hear me?
Hello?
Yes,
And
Gurdev.
yeah, there's some very interesting comments from Gurpreet Maan, and I think Shamsher Singh addressed this in the beginning of the webinar. And you know, 4 comments: how are our presenters involved in their local gurdwaras? And the main problem with today's gurdwaras is that the establishment, the people who are running the gurdwaras, they do not want to give up their power. I mean, I'm also involved in our local gurdwara here, and it becomes very evident, and you know, not pointing fingers at anybody, but the people who run the gurdwaras, the main prabandhaks, they just don't feel like young people are capable of running anything, you know, and oh, we've done so many donations, this still needs to be in our control. And I don't know if somebody else has a comment on this, but it's very difficult to get involved in gurdwaras and go through all the politics that most of them are involved in.
This is Harsharan speaking. If I could share my perspective. I originally was born and raised in Vancouver, so I have kind of witnessed and experienced how Gurdwaras are run there. And now I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where you know, there's not a large population of Sikhs, and you know, our Sikh congregation at our local Gurdwara only consists of maybe 50 to 100 people. And so I've gone into this Gurdwara, and I've been here for almost a year, and you know, we know each other very fast because they recognize a new face as soon as it comes. So you know, they came up to me and approached me, and you know, the whole Sangat did, and I kind of sat back and I realized and recognized how the Gurdwara was run and why things were done a certain way, and I have approached the committee. And the committee consists of six people who are, you know, just businessmen or have been around Winnipeg the longest, and they kind of run this Gurdwara. And I have had these conversations of why do you not have a woman representation on your committee, or why are things done a certain way, or so forth and so forth and so forth. And you know, it's because it's like I, as a younger generation, I want to get involved in the Gurdwara committees, but I'm being told that no, this isn't the way it's done. This isn't the way that it has been done. You're too young. You don't know what you're doing. I think the fusion of Punjabi culture and Sikhism is there, and it's mixed, and it should not be mixed, because from a Sikhi perspective, it doesn't matter if I'm a female or what my age is. But from a Punjabi perspective and our Punjabi culture, it matters. And when that plays a role in how our Sikh Gurdwaras are run, it becomes a problem. And I go there and I try to talk to these people, and it just is not effective. And you know, I try to kind of, you know, do things with the kids, and the Gurdwaras are like, no, you can't do anything with the kids, and you can't have a Sunday Punjabi class, and you can't do this and you can't do that. So you know, it is hard. I'm not saying that I'm not going to continue trying, but there is a lot of resistance. You know, change is good, but only if people are willing, you know, to change or even consider changing.
Yeah, Bhavraj, just to add to that, you know, I'm living in Vancouver. I grew up in a household where my dad was he was in the executive committee of one of the largest gurdwaras in North America at the time in the 80s, Ross Street Khalsa Diwan Society, and you know, when tensions were high and whatnot. So I've seen gurdwaras being run at their best and at their worst. And right now, I mean, I'm happy to report that there is a bit of a change in landscape that is going on where you know, the quote unquote youth, depending on your definition of youth, is starting to take over management of these gurdwaras and creating very attractive programs for the next generation, for younger kids to actually come in, and incenting them to come in by having fun while teaching them about Sikhism. So we are starting to see that trend here in Vancouver, and we're starting to see the other older gurdwaras that have been under the management of the old guard, they're slowly starting to transition out. Either they're being removed via the electoral process, or they're stepping back themselves and they're realizing when they see the change from the other Gurdwaras being run by the youth. So just wanted to add to that.
Yeah, so it's Shamsher here. I've been involved with my local Gurdwara for a number of years, and I'm not so much involved now. Now I've kind of understood the role of the Gurdwara in the community. In our community, perhaps it's an isolated example. I live in South, or has the largest Sikh concentration in the UK, and our Gurdwara is very well established and has a huge budget. And I can't change the Gurdwara as an individual. It's not something that I actually, let me rephrase that. I could change the Gurdwara if I really wanted to devote all of my energy towards changing the Gurdwara, but I don't have the energy for that, and I don't think perhaps the Gurdwara needs to change so much. Perhaps some of the managing practices need to change, and some of the bureaucracy needs to change. But the Gurdwara itself, it's a wonderful place for people to come, and I think as youngsters we should be involved in Gurdwara life. And I think a lot of the problem that comes with youngsters saying that the Gurdwara committee doesn't listen to us, and the committee saying that the youngsters don't do anything, is because we've got to understand, in the Gurdwara there's people that have been doing seva regularly for years and years and years, and sometimes youngsters come with the energy, but the follow-through isn't there. So there's an issue of trust that needs to be built. And if you really want to get involved in your Gurdwara, I used to have the opinion that my local Gurdwara will never let me do anything that I want to do. Now my opinion's changed because I've worked with the committee, and I see that, I understand their perspective. They want continuation. They want regular input. They don't want somebody to come today and have these huge ideas and not follow through with them. You've got to start small locally with your Gurdwara. Just pick one project, a small project that you can do with your Gurdwara in your community, that you can do, whether it's a vegetable garden, whether it's a Gurdwara clean-up day, whether it's organizing a tour for local school kids. Pick any project and see it through, and build that trust and relationship with the committee, and then from one project, then you can do another project and another project and another project, and hopefully you can get to the stage where the Gurdwara will then ask you. You will be the go-to person for a project. When the Gurdwara wants to deliver something, or they want to connect to the younger generation, they will say, actually, you know, there's that girl that always comes here, and she always works really hard, and she brings the children, and she does tours. Why don't we ask her perspective? And that's how relationships are built, and it's not just in the Gurdwara, it's anywhere in our work life, in our personal life. You've got to build the trust.
Yes, I had not introduced myself before. I'm the organizer, but yes, some very good points, some very pertinent points. I think the other thing that really strikes me, and my observation, is a lot of the people that run the Gurdwaras, they have a lot of agyanta in them as to the Gurmat. I think if they had a lot of Gurmat in them, that would make quite a bit of difference, because there's most of the Gurdwaras, and I'm actually born in Africa, immigrated here. There was always a big home issue going on, you know. I have to run this Gurdwara, it runs my way, and this all comes from a lot of agyanta, not knowing enough of what the gurus wanted to inspire us with. And you know, even in the place where we live, somebody doesn't get along with the committee and they go and open their own Gurdwara. I mean, Gurdwara was supposed to be a place of learning, a place to impart knowledge to the younger generation. What was our Guru's intentions? So with those comments, I hope I have not hurt anybody's feelings, but I think we're starting to run out of time. Any other comments?
I think we're out of time at the moment. there's some excellent questions that have been raised, and hopefully this gives people some ideas that they can take forward and look at these issues. I think there was one from Tavleen Kaur. If do we have time to perhaps touch on?
Yeah, just maybe one last question, then we've got to end the session.
Harsharan, do you have any comments about that?
No, I think that was Bhavraj who replied back to her, but he's just signed in on as me as well.
Oh,
so
okay.
yeah. But I think, yeah, we apologize if she meant that when we were talking about Guru Nanak Dev Ji today, we meant physically. You know, that wasn't the idea of this this presentation. It's more the thought process. It's the more of how he thought and how he lived his life. If we could take that and put it in today's time and still be able to learn from what he did and apply it to the issues and the struggles that we face as a society today. And I do, and you know, when she says, it strikes me as a retrograde fitting of Guru Nanak Sahib's ideology as we understand it, because she says that, you know, aren't we all, that Sikhi is counterculture, that's what makes it revolutionary. And I do agree with that, but I feel like sometimes it's hard to kind of, you know, think like that and not be kind of just used to the way the way we receive information and the way we think and stuff like that. It's very hard to kind of take a step back and be like, wait a minute, you know, what Sikhi's perspective and what does Sikhi say is the right way to do things. So I do believe that our presentation kind of, you know, touched up upon those issues today.
Yeah, I'd just like to add briefly to that. I agree with you, and but I think today Sikhi is supposed to be counterculture. I totally agree with that, but today it's taken the form of organized religion, and we have protocols and procedures and policies and practices. It's not really counterculture anymore. It's become an organized system of connecting with divinity, and perhaps that's why we don't have as many Guru Nanaks today. And like you say, we have Guru Nanak's Gurbani today, and yes, we do. But how many of us have connected with the Gurbani on the highest level and really taken the revolution of Nanak into our environments and into our societies? Many of us do try, and I'm not saying that nobody does. Many of us do try, but as a community, there's such a small percentage of activism in challenging issues that affect not only us but all of society. So we really do need to look at that. And the idea of concentrating on Guru Nanak's physical form, of bringing him here today, was kind of to act as like a wake-up call. As if, you know, if the Guru was in front of you and he was here in a physical form, how would he behave, and do we really understand Guru Nanak? So it was a vehicle to try to tackle these issues.
Okay, I think we can close the session. Do any of the panelists have any last-minute comments? Are we all good to go?
Good to go.
All right. In closing, I'd like to thank you all for your questions, and my apologies to those whose questions were not addressed due to time constraints. Please be reminded that these webinars are provided for free, but there is a cost associated with its technology and administration. If you feel you have benefited from this particular webinar or others in the past, please consider making a donation to SikhRI or becoming a webinar sponsor. More details can be obtained in the follow-up email you will receive or by emailing info@sikhri.org. As I end the webinar, I'd like to thank the presenters and the audience for coming today, and to remind everyone to wait for a few seconds for the link to appear to a follow-up survey. Your feedback is extremely important to Sikh Research Institute, and we appreciate your time very much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Sidak. That's,